Are you a high schooler or a parent of a high schooler who's about to be applying to college? Are you starting to see seniors getting their decisions and wondering, what do the trends from the previous class mean for me and my family? Well, you've come to the right place. In this video, we're going to talk about how to use the trends from the previous year to figure out what is going to be important for you as you apply to college. Hello everyone, and welcome back to Lotus Premier Education. My name is Amanda and I want to be your college tutor. Today we're going to talk about the trends and statistics from the year above you and how to use that information to best strategize your college application. So let's get into it. Right now, trends are starting to come out from the class of 2024. So we're still hearing some decisions, but a lot of them have come out, and we can already start seeing some main things that are going to be important for next year's class, which is going to be the high school class of 2025. But whether you're in that class or whether you're not, it's really important to understand how to use the trends from the year above you to figure out what you should do in the college admissions process. So the year above you is often a really huge indicator as to what colleges are looking for. And we're going to talk about how that is seen in some of our trends today. One thing that was really, really big for the class of 2024 was transcript and specifically GPA. Now, this is a really interesting trend because when you apply to colleges actually rescale or recalculate your GPA based on the information that they have from your high school, your region, and their own grading metric. So that specific GPA number is not always the most important factor. They also take into account academic rigor over time, courses that you selected, and they also look at your highest grades and your lowest grades to really make an indication of what your overall grade is going to be on their scale. But this was the first year that we as independent counselors were hearing a lot of admissions officers talk specifically about GPA. And even more specifically, some of the things that they were mentioning were GPA cutoffs, not really even being able to consider candidates that were below a certain GPA margin. One of the things that tells us is that there's going to be an increasing shift towards academics on your college applications. Now, this was something that we already knew. Transcripts are one of the first things that colleges evaluate, and they're always worth at least 30% of your decision, if not more, because they are the first thing that colleges see, and they are the thing that sort of gets you into that next step and places you within the college admissions landscape. But why do we think that GPA and academic rigor were so important? Let's take a guess. It's because of COVID. So one of the things that happened during the COVID pandemic is that a lot of schools had to really refigure out how to assess students. Some of this came from test optional policies, but a lot of this came from the fact that every school handled the pandemic differently, with online learning, hybrid situations, different structures for classes. And what happened was students had a really wide gap in knowledge, but every school and every student had different gaps in knowledge depending on how they were teaching. And so what happened is the student body at colleges started suffering because students weren't as prepared for schools. And colleges really started struggling in that capacity just based on where they were fitting students, how students were moving through their classes, and what was happening on campuses. And so we're seeing that trickle down to admissions now. When admissions officers are specifically focused on GPA or a GPA cutoff or seeing certain grades on a transcript, what they're saying is we really need to prioritize our academic rigor first and make sure that this specific candidate is prepared for our curriculum. So that was the first trend that we were seeing from the class of 2024. For next year's classes and for the classes that are coming afterward, one of the things that we're going to say is just make sure that you're really putting academics first and not having grades that you need to explain on your transcript. The second thing that we were seeing from the class of 2024 is a reduction in test optional considerations. So even though most schools were test optional for this past academic cycle, there were lower numbers of students accepted in early decision and regular pools that did not send in high test scores. So what this has been indicating is that schools are going to start leaning towards test required policies again, or at least being really forward about considering high test scores. We're also now seeing that schools are starting to rescind their test optional admissions policies and make testing required once again. So they're very clearly telling you, we want to see high test scores. Make sure that you take the time and set your resources and take standardized tests to the best of your ability. It should be part of your application plan. Although there are students that may struggle with this and may end up going test optional anyway, you want to make sure that you give standardized tests your best effort first. One of the other things that we were seeing from the class of 2024 is a shift in extracurricular activities. So extracurricular activities that were carrying more weight this year. Independent projects have been something that students have been on board with and college admissions officers have been prioritizing, especially because independent projects were the only things that were really able to run during COVID. But students have started understanding that colleges want to see that. And so we're getting an influx of independent projects, but a lot of them don't actually have a substantial base. So one of the things that students should take away from this past year's college admissions trends is that you should do an independent project, something that you're really passionate about, something that you start or found or launch. But if you are going to do that, make sure it really has substantial backing. It's very, very difficult to be sending something in on your college transcript that is half started or a little bit done, but is not something you really pour a lot of time or effort into. So if you send in a passion project, which you should, it should be a passion project you really grow over the course of your time in high school. Something to always be careful with, which we are very passionate about here at Lotus Premier Education, is athletics. Athletics are really important. They are a great outlet for mental health, but you want to make sure that you really balance the athletics that are on your extracurricular activities list. If you are a student who is not being recruited, you need to make sure that you have enough of a balance of other activities, because athletics should not be your full narrative if you are not pursuing a recruiting pathway. They can be very fulfilling activities, but they also need to be supplemented by other things. The last trend that we are seeing from the 2024 admission cycle is changes in demonstrated interest. So more students have become aware of demonstrated interest and sending out initial emails to admissions officers. Now we need to start getting a little bit more creative. So you need to have a very well-structured demonstrated interest plan, and it should be a plan that you come up with your school counselor, your parents, your independent educational counselor, someone who really understands what admissions officers are actually looking for. It's better to come up with a very structured, very intelligent, intellectual, and intentional plan rather than just to kind of throw everything at demonstrated interest. We're seeing colleges be a little bit more wary about this. So we hope this video is helpful in you understanding the trends from the year above, but also understanding how if you really pay attention to the struggles of the senior class first, you can best strategize your college application process. On a separate note, you should also really pay attention to the senior class at your school and where they're getting in, because you can really start seeing trends of certain schools that maybe are easier some years for early action and then really hard for the next years, and try to figure out what might be most advantageous for you as you build your college list, your college narrative, and your college strategy. So we hope this video was helpful. Please like, subscribe to our channel, drop any questions you have in the comments below, and we will try to answer them. And we look forward to seeing you back here soon on Lotus Premier Education. Bye, guys.